The moment Ethan Cole's wrench slipped inside the junction box, 3,000 volts of raw electricity exploded across his knuckles. And that wasn't even the worst part of his day. 20 feet away, inside the mansion's security office, a billionaire CEO was watching him on 12 different camera angles, making a decision that would ruin both their lives. But right now, all Ethan could think about was the broken gate, the screaming paparazzi outside, and the fact that his truck payment was 3 weeks overdue. He had no idea the woman behind those cameras was about to become his biggest mistake. If you want to see how this impossible love story destroys everything they've built, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The security gate made a sound like a dying animal, metal grinding against metal, sparks shooting from the motor housing in angry bursts of orange light. Ethan stood there with his toolbox, squinting against the morning sun, watching the whole mechanism seize up completely. Perfect, he muttered. Just perfect. Behind him, down the narrow access road that curved up toward the estate's main entrance, at least 30 photographers were packed against the outer fence line. Cameras clicked like insects. Voices shouted questions that all blurred together into white noise. Victoria, just one statement. Is it true about the merger? Who's the guy with the toolbox? Ethan ignored them. He'd been ignoring people his whole life. Bill collectors, his ex-wife's lawyer, the school counselor who kept suggesting his daughter needed additional support services he couldn't afford. One more crowd of strangers yelling at him wasn't going to register. He knelt down beside the gate's control panel, popping it open with a flathead screwdriver. Inside, the wiring looked like someone had let a toddler loose with electrical tape and a prayer. Whoever installed this system had taken shortcuts, dangerous ones. You've got to be kidding me, Ethan said to nobody. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out without thinking, saw the name on the screen, and felt his chest tighten. Jenny, you're late again. I'm keeping track this time. Don't think I won't use it. His ex-wife, mother of his 7-year-old daughter, professional grudge holder and part-time human nightmare. Ethan typed back with one hand while holding a voltage meter with the other. Ethan, I'm working. I'll pick her up by 6. Jenny, you said that last week. She had to wait at aftercare until 6:45. Ethan, I said I'm working. He shoved the phone back into his pocket before she could respond. The voltage meter beeped. Live current running through a ground wire. Amateur hour. Sir? Ethan looked up. A woman in a black suit stood about 10 feet away, hands clasped in front of her like she was guarding the Pope. Security? Probably. She had that look. Dead eyes, tight mouth, zero sense of humor. You need to fix that gate, she said. Yeah, I got that part, Ethan replied. That's why I'm standing here with tools. Ms. Hale is waiting. Ms. Hale can keep waiting. This thing's a fire hazard. If I rush it, we'll all be waiting while the fire department shows up. The woman's jaw tightened. She didn't like being talked back to. Ethan didn't care. He'd spent the last 4 years working repair contracts for rich people who thought throwing money at a problem made it disappear. They never liked hearing the truth. How long? The woman asked. 20 minutes if you stop talking to me. 40 if you don't. She turned and walked away without another word. Ethan went back to the wiring. Behind him, the photographers kept shouting. One of them had a drone now. He could hear the buzzing. He worked methodically. Strip the bad wire. Splice in a new connector. Test the relay. The sun climbed higher and sweat started soaking through the back of his shirt. His knees ached from kneeling on the concrete. Somewhere inside the estate, a dog barked. 15 minutes later, the gate's motor hummed back to life. Smooth, clean, no sparks. Ethan closed the panel, stood up, and hit the test button. The gate rolled shut with a solid metallic click, cutting off the photographer's mid-shout. Silence dropped over the driveway like a curtain. Finally, Ethan said. He gathered his tools, wiped his hands on his jeans, and started walking toward his truck. He'd parked it near the service entrance, a beat-up Ford Ranger with a missing taillight and a dent in the driver's side door. Not exactly the kind of vehicle that belonged on a property like this. Excuse me. The voice came from behind him. Female, calm, the kind of voice that didn't have to yell to make people listen. Ethan turned around. She stood about 20 feet away, hands in the pockets of a gray blazer that probably cost more than his rent. Dark hair pulled back tight. No makeup, or maybe just enough that you couldn't tell. Sharp eyes that looked at him like she was doing math in her head. Victoria Hale. He recognized her from the news. You couldn't live in this city without seeing her face at least once a week. Magazine covers, business segments, charity galas. The woman who turned her father's failing tech company into a billion-dollar empire before she turned 30. The CEO who fired 3 executives in one day and made the stock price go up. "You're Ethan Cole," she said. "That's what my driver's license says." "You fixed the gate." "That's what you paid me for." She walked closer. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Like she'd already decided how this conversation would go and was giving him time to catch up. "You work for Prestige Property Services," she said. "Sometimes, when they need extra hands. And the rest of the time? I fix things. Whatever needs fixing." Victoria stopped about 6 feet away, close enough to talk without shouting, far enough to keep things professional. She looked at him the way people look at furniture they're thinking about buying, assessing quality, checking for damage. "The gate's been malfunctioning for 3 weeks," she said. 4 different technicians came out here. None of them could fix it. "They probably didn't want to," Ethan said. "That wiring was a mess. Fixing it right takes time. Easier to just tell you the whole system needs replacing." "But you fixed it." "I fixed it right. There's a difference." Something changed in her expression. Not a smile. Not exactly. Just a small shift around her eyes, like she'd just confirmed something she already suspected. "I need someone who fixes things right," Victoria said. Ethan picked up his toolbox. "Then you need someone with more hours in the day than I've got. I'll pay double your rate." "I'm sure you will." "Doesn't give me more hours." "Triple." He stopped, looked at her. Really looked at her. Up close, she didn't look like the magazine covers. She looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that gets into your bones and stays there. "I've got a daughter," Ethan said. "I pick her up from school most days. I can't just drop everything and camp out here playing handyman. I'm not asking you to camp out. I'm asking you to fix what's broken." "How much is broken?" "I'll make you a list." Ethan set his toolbox down again. This was a bad idea. He could feel it in his gut. Rich people always wanted more than they paid for. They acted like money bought them pieces of your life, little slices of your time that they could own, but triple rate. That was real money. The kind of money that could get him caught up on truck payments, maybe even cover the aftercare bills Jenny kept threatening to take him to court over. "One condition," Ethan said. "I work my own schedule. You give me the list, I knock it out when I can, but I don't answer calls after 6 p.m. and I don't work Sundays." "Agreed. And I want payment every 2 weeks. Not net 30, not whenever accounting gets around to it. Every 2 weeks." Victoria pulled a phone from her pocket. Expensive. Thin. The kind that probably cost more than his truck. "Give me your banking information," she said. "I'll have the first payment sent today. I haven't done any work yet." "Consider it a retainer." She said it like it was normal, like people just threw money at strangers all the time. Maybe in her world, they did. Ethan gave her the details. She typed without looking at the screen, thumbs moving fast. 30 seconds later, his phone buzzed. "Deposit, $4,500. His stomach flipped. $4,500. Just like that. He'd been expecting maybe $1,500, $2,000 tops. That's half the first month," Victoria said. "The rest comes when you finish the initial repairs." "What initial repairs?" "Come inside, I'll show you." She turned and started walking toward the main house. Ethan stood there for a second, looking at his phone, looking at her back, looking at his truck. Bad idea. Definitely a bad idea. He followed her anyway. Well, the inside of the estate looked like something out of a movie. High ceilings, marble floors, windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, flooding every room with natural light. The kind of place where everything was expensive and nothing was comfortable. Victoria walked fast. Ethan followed, toolbox in hand, trying not to stare at the artwork on the walls. Was that a real Rothko? It looked like a real Rothko. "Security system needs an upgrade," Victoria said without slowing down. "Current setup is 5 years old. Half the cameras have dead zones. The motion sensors trigger every time a bird flies past the windows." "You want me to install a new system?" "I want you to tell me what I need, then install it." They passed through a kitchen that could have fit Ethan's entire apartment inside it. Stainless steel everything. An island counter the size of a car. A refrigerator that probably had more computing power than the laptop he'd bought used off Craigslist. Guest house needs electrical work, Victoria continued. Lights flicker. Outlets don't hold plugs properly. The breaker trips if you run the heater and the coffee maker at the same time. Sounds like aluminum wiring, Ethan said. Whole place probably needs rewiring. Then rewire it. She said it like it was simple, like rewiring an entire building was the same as changing a light bulb. They walked through a side door, across a stone path, past a pool that looked like it belonged at a resort. The guest house sat at the back of the property, tucked behind a row of trees. Smaller than the main building, but still bigger than most houses Ethan had ever been inside. Victoria opened the door without knocking. Inside, the space looked lived in, but empty. A couch that nobody sat on. A kitchen that nobody cooked in. The kind of place that existed just to exist. Check the electrical panel, Victoria said. Then give me an estimate. Ethan set down his toolbox and found the panel behind a closet door. The moment he opened it, he knew she was right. Aluminum wiring. Outdated breakers. The whole system was a code violation waiting to happen. This is going to take time, he said. We're talking full rewire, permits, inspections. You can't just... How much time? 3 weeks? Maybe 4. Do it in 2. I'll handle the permits. Ethan closed the panel and turned to look at her. She stood near the window, arms crossed, looking out at the pool. The afternoon light cut across her face at an angle, and for a second she didn't look like a CEO. She just looked like someone who was tired of being alone in a big house. Why me? Ethan asked. Excuse me? You've got money. You could hire a whole company, union electricians, project managers, the works. Why hire some guy who does side jobs? Victoria didn't answer right away. She kept looking out the window, like the answer was somewhere in the trees. Because companies send different people every day, she finally said. Different faces, different voices. I don't want different people in my house. You want consistency. I want someone who doesn't treat me like a photo opportunity. Ethan understood that. He'd watched the photographers outside, seen the way they pushed and shoved just to get a shot of her through a car window. That kind of attention would make anyone want to lock the doors and throw away the key. I'm not a celebrity bodyguard, Ethan said. I'm just a guy who fixes things. I know exactly what you are, Victoria replied. That's why I'm hiring you, Mum. He started the next day. Victoria gave him a key card for the service entrance and a code for the security system. She also gave him a list, handwritten on expensive paper, of everything that needed work. The list was long. Too long. Main house, replace HV, AC filters, repair third-floor bathroom leak, fix sticking doors in east wing, upgrade circuit breakers in kitchen. Guest house, full electrical rewire, replace water heater, repair deck boards, fix irrigation system. Exterior, resurface driveway, repair garden lighting, winterize pool system, replace fence post near north property line. Ethan sat in his truck, reading the list, doing math in his head. At this rate, he'd be working here for months. Maybe longer. His phone buzzed. Jenny. Don't forget, soccer practice tonight, 5:30. Don't be late. Ethan. I'll be there. Jenny. You better be. He shoved the phone away and got to work. The first week was all grunt labor. Replacing filters, fixing leaks, small stuff that didn't require much thinking. He worked alone most of the time. Occasionally he'd see Victoria through a window, talking on the phone or typing on a laptop. She never came outside to check on him, never asked for progress reports. Just let him work. It was strange. Most clients hovered, asked questions, wanted updates every 5 minutes. Victoria acted like he didn't exist. Until the second week. He was in the guest house, running new wire through the ceiling, when he heard the door open behind him. How's it going? Victoria's voice. Ethan climbed down from the ladder, wiping dust off his hands. Slow. Whoever built this place hid the junction boxes behind drywall. I have to cut access panels just to reach the wiring. Will that be a problem? Just means more patching and painting when I'm done. She walked over to the window, same spot as before. Like that was her place in this room. Ethan had started to notice things like that. The way she always stood with her arms crossed when she was thinking, the way she checked her phone every few minutes but rarely answered it. You work alone a lot, she said. It's easier that way. No employees? Can't afford employees, can barely afford tools. Victoria turned away from the window, looked at him directly. You're good at this. Why don't you have a real business? Ethan picked up a wire stripper, tested the blade. Because real businesses require real money. Licenses, insurance, trucks that don't break down every other week. I do what I can with what I've got. And what you've got isn't much. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an insult either, just a statement of fact. Ethan appreciated that. He was tired of people pretending poverty was noble or character building. Poverty was just poverty. It didn't make you better. It just made you tired. I get by, Ethan said. What about your daughter? He looked up sharply. What about her? You mentioned picking her up from school. That's why you can't work late. That's right. How old is she? 7. And her mother? Ethan set down the wire stripper. This conversation was moving into territory he didn't like. Her mother and I aren't together. Hasn't been together for 3 years. We split custody, but I do most of the actual parenting. That must be difficult. It's life. Victoria nodded slowly, like she was filing that information away somewhere. Then she changed the subject completely. Do you want coffee? She asked. Ethan blinked. What? Coffee. I'm making some for myself. Do you want a cup? It was such a normal question, such a small thing. But something about it felt significant, like she was testing something, or maybe offering something. Sure, Ethan said. Black. No sugar. She disappeared into the kitchen. He heard cabinets opening, the hiss of an expensive coffee machine. A few minutes later, she came back with 2 mugs, plain white ceramic. Nothing fancy. She handed him one and kept the other for herself. They stood there drinking coffee in silence. Outside, birds sang in the trees. The pool filter hummed quietly. For a moment, the world felt smaller, less complicated. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. You're paying me triple rate. You can ask whatever you want. Why do you do this? The repair work, I mean. You're clearly smart enough to do something else. Ethan sipped his coffee. It was good coffee, the expensive kind that actually tasted like something. I like fixing things, he said. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it work again. It's simple, clear. You can see the problem, you solve it, and it stays solved. Unlike most problems. Unlike most problems, Ethan agreed. Victoria looked at him over the rim of her mug. Really looked at him. Not the way she'd looked at him that first day, like furniture being appraised. This was different. This was curiosity. You don't care that I'm rich, she said. Should I? Most people do. They either treat me like I'm royalty or like I'm a target. Nobody just treats me like a person. You want me to start bowing or something? The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Close. No, she said. I want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing. She finished her coffee, set the mug down on the counter, and walked toward the door. Victoria, Ethan said. She stopped, turned. Why do you spend so much time out here? He asked. In the guest house, I mean. The main house is empty most of the time. She didn't answer right away, just stood there, hand on the doorframe, looking at nothing in particular. Because the main house feels like a museum, she finally said. This place feels like it could be a home. Then she left. Ethan stood there for a long time after she was gone, holding his empty coffee mug, thinking about what she'd said. A museum. Yeah, he could see that. The main house was beautiful, but it wasn't alive. It was a place to impress people, not a place to live. He went back to work, but something had shifted. The job didn't feel like just a job anymore, and that made him nervous. By the end of the 3rd week, Ethan had settled into a routine. He'd arrive around 9 after dropping his daughter at school, work until 2:30, then leave to pick her up. Evenings were for homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Then he'd sit alone in his apartment, going over the next day's work in his head. Victoria had started appearing more often. Not hovering, just present. She'd bring coffee, ask questions about the work, make small talk that didn't feel small. One afternoon, while Ethan was replacing a circuit breaker in the main house kitchen, she sat at the island counter with her laptop, typing emails or spreadsheets or whatever billionaires typed. Do you ever stop working? Ethan asked. Do you? She replied without looking up. Touché. She smiled at her screen. He caught it in his peripheral vision and felt something warm settle in his chest. Dangerous. That feeling was dangerous. What are you working on? He asked, more to distract himself than because he cared. Acquisition proposal. We're trying to buy a software company in Austin. They don't want to sell. So you're going to make them an offer they can't refuse? Something like that. Ethan finished tightening the breaker and closed the panel. Must be nice, having that kind of power. Victoria stopped typing, closed her laptop, looked at him with those sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through bullshit. You think I like this? She asked. I think you're good at it. Being good at something doesn't mean you like it. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. Then why do it? Because someone has to. Because 3,000 people work for my company and they all have families and mortgages and lives that depend on me making the right decisions. Because if I stop, everything collapses. There was heat in her voice now, not anger, something closer to frustration, like she'd been holding this in for a long time and it was finally spilling out. That sounds exhausting, Ethan said quietly. It is. So why not quit? Sell the company. Walk away. Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. And do what? I've been running this company since I was 24. I don't know how to be anything else. Ethan understood that. He'd been fixing things since he was a teenager. It wasn't just a job, it was who he was. For what it's worth, he said, you seem like more than just a CEO to me. Victoria's expression softened. Just a little. Just enough. Yeah? She said. Yeah. They held eye contact for a few seconds longer than necessary. Long enough for Ethan to notice the way the afternoon light caught the side of her face. Long enough for him to realize he'd been thinking about her more than he should. He broke the gaze first, looked down at his tools, cleared his throat. I should get going, he said. Need to pick up my daughter. Of course. But neither of them moved. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, warmer. Same time tomorrow? Victoria asked. Same time tomorrow, Ethan confirmed. He packed his tools and left through the service entrance. Drove down the long driveway, past the security gate that now worked perfectly, out onto the main road where normal people lived normal lives. His phone buzzed at a red light. Victoria. Thank you for the conversation. I don't get many of those. Ethan stared at the message. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. He should keep it professional, should just say no problem or any time and leave it at that. Instead, he typed, neither do I. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Victoria. Maybe we should fix that. The light turned green. Someone honked behind him. Ethan drove forward, but his mind stayed back in that kitchen, in that moment when everything had started feeling different. This was a bad idea. He knew it was a bad idea, but he was going to do it anyway. The next morning, Ethan showed up at 8:55 instead of 9. He told himself it was because he wanted to get an early start on the guest house wiring. That was a lie, and he knew it. Victoria's car was already in the driveway, a black Tesla that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. He parked his truck near the service entrance and grabbed his toolbox from the bed. His phone buzzed before he reached the door. Victoria. Coffee's ready, guest house. Ethan stared at the message. She was waiting for him. Actually waiting. That warm feeling from yesterday came back, settling in his chest like something he couldn't shake loose. He walked across the stone path, past the pool where morning sunlight turned the water into liquid glass. The guest house door was open. Inside, he could smell fresh coffee and something else. Bread, maybe? Toast. Victoria stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. She wasn't wearing a blazer today, just a simple white shirt and dark jeans. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in a way that made her look younger. Less CEO, more actual human being. You're early, she said, without turning around. So are you. I live here. You live in the main house. She handed him a mug. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Technically, they stood there drinking coffee while the morning stretched out around them. Ethan noticed things he shouldn't have been noticing. The way she held her mug with both hands, the small scar near her left eyebrow, the fact that she wasn't wearing any jewelry except a simple watch. I made toast, Victoria said. Want some? You don't have to feed me. I know I don't have to. I'm asking if you want some. Then, yeah, I want some. She pulled 2 plates from the cabinet and set them on the counter. The toast was already buttered, perfectly golden. It looked like something from a cooking show. They ate standing up, which felt strange and normal at the same time, like they were 2 people grabbing breakfast before work instead of a billionaire and the guy she was paying to rewire her guest house. Can I ask you something personal? Victoria said between bites. Depends on how personal. Your ex-wife. What happened there? Ethan took a long drink of coffee, buying himself time to decide how honest to be. We got married too young, had a kid too fast, realized we didn't actually like each other very much. That simple? Nothing's that simple, but yeah, basically. Does she make things difficult with your daughter? Every chance she gets. Ethan set down his mug harder than he meant to. Jenny thinks money fixes everything. She wanted me to get a corporate job, wear a tie, climb some ladder I didn't give a damn about. When I wouldn't do it, she decided I was a failure. Are you? The question was so direct it made Ethan laugh. By her standards, absolutely. By mine, I'm doing fine. Victoria nodded slowly, like she was processing that. My parents wanted me to sell the company after my father died. Said I was too young, too inexperienced. They wanted me to take the buyout offer and live off the money. But you didn't. No, I built it into something bigger instead, and now they don't talk to me anymore. Because you succeeded? Because I proved them wrong. Some people can't handle that. Ethan understood that more than she probably realized. His own father had told him he'd never amount to anything without a college degree. Told him trade work was for people who couldn't hack it in the real world. They hadn't spoken in 6 years. So we're both disappointments, Ethan said. Victoria smiled. A real smile this time. Not the careful half smile she usually gave. I'll drink to that. They tapped their coffee mugs together like champagne glasses. It was stupid and small and somehow felt more significant than it should have. I should get to work, Ethan said, even though he didn't want to move. Yeah, me too. But neither of them moved. They just stood there in the kitchen, morning light pouring through the windows, the world outside feeling very far away. Victoria's phone rang. The spell broke. She pulled it from her pocket, looked at the screen, and her whole face changed. The warmth disappeared. The CEO mask slid back into place. I have to take this, she said. Go ahead. She walked outside, phone pressed to her ear. Ethan could hear her voice through the open door. Sharp, professional. Completely different from the woman who'd just shared toast with him. He cleaned up the plates and got to work. The electrical panel was a disaster. Every time he pulled out another wire, he found 3 more problems hiding behind it. By noon, he'd opened up half the ceiling and discovered the previous electrician had violated about a dozen building codes. How bad is it? Ethan looked down from the ladder. Victoria stood in the doorway, jacket back on, hair pulled up again. She'd been in meetings all morning. He could tell by the tension in her shoulders. Bad, he said. Whoever wired this place should have had their license revoked. I'm finding live wires just hanging loose in the walls. Can you fix it? Yeah, but it's going to take longer than 2 weeks. More like 4. Maybe 5. Victoria pulled out her phone, typed something. Done. Take the time you need. That's going to cost you more. I don't care about the money, Ethan. I care about it being done right. The way she said his name made something tighten in his chest. Like it mattered to her. Like he mattered to her. Okay, he said. 4 weeks. She nodded and started to leave, then stopped. Are you eating lunch? Usually just grab something from my truck. There's leftover Thai food in the main house fridge. Help yourself. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Stop saying that. She left before he could argue. Ethan stood there on the ladder, holding a wire stripper, trying to figure out when this job had stopped being a job. He ate lunch alone in the main house kitchen. The Thai food was expensive, the kind with actual vegetables and meat that didn't come from a freezer bag. He sat at the massive island counter, scrolling through his phone while he ate. Jenny had sent 4 messages, all of them variations on the same theme. He was irresponsible, unreliable, and she was documenting everything for the custody lawyer. He didn't respond. There was no point. Anything he said would just get twisted into ammunition. Instead, he opened the message from Victoria, the one from last night. Maybe we should fix that. He should delete it, should keep things professional, should remember that she was a client and he was the help. And crossing that line was a disaster waiting to happen. He didn't delete it. The afternoon passed slowly. Ethan ran new wire through the ceiling, marked junction boxes, tested connections. Methodical work that let his mind wander. He thought about Victoria, about the way she'd looked at him this morning, about the fact that she'd made him toast. It was just toast. It didn't mean anything. Except it did. He knew it did. Around 2:15, he cleaned up and headed out. He had to pick up his daughter from school, then deal with soccer practice and homework and all the normal parent things that filled his evenings. His truck coughed twice before starting. He made a mental note to check the battery. Again. His phone buzzed as he reached the main road. Victoria. Same time tomorrow? Ethan. Yeah, same time. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Victoria. I'll make pancakes. Ethan stared at the message so long he almost missed his turn. She was flirting, or being friendly, or just being nice. He couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty was killing him. Ethan. You don't have to cook for me. Victoria. Stop telling me what I don't have to do. He smiled at his phone like an idiot. Then he put it away and drove to pick up his daughter before he did something stupid. The next 2 weeks fell into a pattern. Ethan would show up at the estate, Victoria would have breakfast ready, and they'd spend 30 minutes talking before he started working. Sometimes she'd stay in the guest house while he worked, typing on her laptop or making phone calls. Sometimes she'd disappear into the main house for hours, then come back looking exhausted and sit on the couch while he explained whatever electrical problem he'd just discovered. They talked about everything. His daughter, her company, his ex-wife, her parents, books they'd read, movies they'd watched, places they'd never been but wanted to go. Victoria told him about growing up rich but lonely, with parents who threw money at problems instead of dealing with them. About taking over her father's company at 24 and having every executive twice her age treat her like a child playing dress-up. Ethan told her about growing up poor but surrounded by people, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and nobody had anything but they shared it anyway. About learning to fix things because they couldn't afford to replace them. About marrying Jenny because she was pregnant and it seemed like the right thing to do, then realizing too late that right and good weren't the same thing. Do you regret it? Victoria asked one morning while they drank coffee on the guest house deck. Getting married? I regret marrying the wrong person, Ethan said. I don't regret my daughter. She's the only thing I've ever done that feels completely right. What's her name? Sophie. Tell me about her. So he did. He told Victoria about Sophie's obsession with dinosaurs, her terrible knock-knock jokes, the way she still held his hand when they crossed streets. He told her about reading bedtime stories in silly voices and helping with math homework, even though he barely remembered fractions himself. Victoria listened like it mattered, like his stories about a 7-year-old girl were just as important as her stories about running a billion-dollar company. You're a good father, she said when he finished. I'm trying to be. That's more than a lot of people do. They sat in comfortable silence after that. The morning was cool and mist hung low over the pool. Somewhere in the trees, birds were having a loud argument about territory. I wish I'd had a father like you, Victoria said quietly. Ethan looked at her. She was staring out at the water, her expression unreadable. What was your father like? He asked. Absent. Even when he was physically present, he wasn't really there. He cared about the company, about making money, about his reputation. He didn't care much about me. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me strong, made me learn to rely on myself. Being strong all the time sounds exhausting. Victoria turned to look at him. It is. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Two people who'd spent their whole lives carrying weight alone, suddenly realizing they didn't have to. Ethan's phone alarm went off. Time to get to work. He stood up, breaking the moment before it could become something he couldn't walk back from. I should check those junction boxes, he said. Right, yeah, but the moment stayed with them. Ethan could feel it while he worked, like static electricity on his skin. He'd look up and catch Victoria watching him from across the room. She'd look away quickly, but not quickly enough. They were circling something. Both of them knew it. Neither of them was ready to name it. One evening, Ethan stayed late. He told himself it was because he wanted to finish running the wire through the west wall before calling it a day. That was partially true. The other truth was that Sophie was at Jenny's house for the week, and his apartment felt too empty to go home to. Victoria appeared around 6:30 with 2 beers. "You're still here," she said. "Almost done. You say that every night." "This time I mean it." She sat on the couch and opened both beers, setting one on the coffee table for him. Ethan climbed down from the ladder and joined her. They drank in silence for a while. Outside, the sky was turning purple. The pool lights had come on automatically, casting blue ripples across the ceiling. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said. "Sure." "I haven't had a real friend in 8 years." Ethan looked at her. She was staring at her beer bottle, peeling the label with her thumbnail. "What about all those people at your company?" he asked. "Employees, not friends. There's a difference." "What about outside work?" "Everyone outside work wants something. Access, money, connections, a story to sell to tabloids. Nobody just wants to know me." "That sounds lonely." "It is." She took a long drink. "But then you showed up to fix a gate, and suddenly I have someone to have breakfast with. Someone who doesn't care that I'm rich or famous or powerful. Someone who just treats me like a person." Ethan's throat felt tight. "Victoria, I'm not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I just wanted you to know that these last few weeks have been the best I've felt in a long time, and I don't want them to end." "The rewiring's almost done." "I know. Then I won't have a reason to be here anymore." Victoria set down her beer and turned to face him fully. "Find a reason." The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Ethan knew he should leave, should finish his beer, pack his tools, and drive away before this became something that couldn't be undone. Instead, he said, "What kind of reason?" "I don't know. There's always something that needs fixing." "You're going to invent problems just to keep me around?" "If I have to." She said it so simply, so honestly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan should have laughed it off, should have made a joke, should have done anything except what he actually did, which was reach out and take her hand. Victoria's fingers closed around his. Her hand was smaller than his, softer. She looked at their joined hands like she couldn't quite believe they were real. "This is a bad idea," Ethan said. "Probably." "You're my client." "I know." "I'm nobody. You're—" "Don't." Her grip tightened. "Don't do that. Don't make yourself smaller just because I have money. You're not nobody, Ethan. You're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm not nobody." They sat there, hands linked, while the pool lights flickered patterns across the walls. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the warmth of her skin against his. "I should go," he said. "Okay." But neither of them moved. Victoria leaned closer, just slightly, just enough for Ethan to smell her perfume, something light and expensive that probably had a French name he couldn't pronounce. "I'm going to kiss you," she said, "and if you don't want that, you should leave right now." Ethan didn't leave. She kissed him softly, carefully, like she was afraid he might break. Her hand came up to touch his face, fingers brushing against his jaw. When they pulled apart, Ethan couldn't breathe properly. His brain was screaming warnings, red flags, danger signs. His heart wasn't listening. "That was," he started. "A mistake?" Victoria finished. "I was going to say worth repeating." She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and made her look like someone who hadn't forgotten how to be happy. They kissed again. Slower this time. Deeper. Ethan's hand found the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. Victoria made a small sound that went straight through him. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "We can't do this," Ethan said. "I know. If anyone finds out, I know. Your reputation, your company, everything you've built. I know, Ethan. I know all of it." She pressed her forehead against his. "But I don't care. Not right now. Right now, I just want to feel like a person instead of a brand." Ethan understood that. He'd spent years feeling like a failure, a deadbeat, a cautionary tale. With Victoria, he felt like someone who mattered. They sat on the couch for a long time, not talking, just existing in the same space. Victoria's head rested on his shoulder. His arm was around her waist. It felt normal and impossible at the same time. Eventually, reality crept back in. Ethan had to go home. Victoria had early meetings. They couldn't stay frozen in this moment forever. "Tomorrow?" she asked as he gathered his tools. "Tomorrow." Same time? Same time. She walked him to the door. They stood in the threshold, neither wanting to be the first to step away. This is dangerous, Ethan said. I know. We should stop before it gets worse. Probably. Are we going to stop? Victoria looked up at him. Her eyes were clear and certain. No. Okay then. He kissed her one more time, quick and sweet, then forced himself to walk away. His truck started on the first try, which felt like a small miracle, or maybe a bad omen. He couldn't tell anymore. His phone buzzed before he reached the main road. Victoria, I'm already looking forward to tomorrow. Ethan, me too. He drove home through empty streets, his mind replaying everything that had just happened. The kiss, the touch, the way she'd looked at him like he was something precious. This was going to end badly. He knew that with absolute certainty. Rich women didn't end up with broke handymen. That wasn't how the world worked. There were rules, and those rules existed for a reason. But right now, driving through the dark with the taste of her still on his lips, Ethan didn't care about the rules. He just wanted tomorrow to come faster. The next morning felt different, electric. Ethan showed up 10 minutes early and found Victoria already waiting in the guest house. She'd made waffles this time, real waffles, not frozen ones. You're early, she said. So are you. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. They ate breakfast standing close together, shoulders touching. Every time their eyes met, Ethan felt that jolt again, like touching a live wire. We need to be careful, Victoria said between bites. I know. My security team watches everything. The cameras, the gates, who comes and goes. Can they see us in here? No. I had the guest house cameras removed last year. Privacy. Lucky coincidence. Not a coincidence. She looked at him. I've been planning this longer than you think. That confession should have scared him. Instead, it made him feel wanted in a way he hadn't felt in years. They kissed against the kitchen counter, waffles forgotten. Victoria's hand slid under his shirt, fingers tracing the muscles in his back. Ethan lifted her onto the counter, and she wrapped her legs around him. We have to stop, she said between kisses. Why? Because if we don't, I'm going to do something that makes it impossible to pretend this is casual. Ethan pulled back just enough to look at her. Her hair was messy, her lips were swollen. She looked nothing like the controlled CEO from the magazines. What if I don't want it to be casual, he asked. Then we're both in trouble. They kissed again, slower this time, more deliberately, like they were memorizing each other. Eventually, they forced themselves apart. Ethan had work to do. Victoria had meetings. The real world was waiting. But something had changed. They both felt it. Over the next week, they fell into a new rhythm. Breakfast together, stolen kisses between work calls, lunch on the deck, more kisses. Ethan working while Victoria sat nearby, both of them hyper-aware of each other's presence. They kept it hidden, careful. When other people were around, security guards, delivery drivers, the occasional executive who stopped by, they maintained perfect professional distance. But alone, they were something else entirely. One afternoon, while Ethan was testing the new electrical panel, Victoria came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. I have a confession, she said. What? The irrigation system doesn't actually need fixing. Ethan turned in her arms. What? And the deck boards are fine, and half the things on that list I gave you are just excuses to keep you here longer. Are you serious? Completely serious. I started making up problems after the second week. Ethan should have been angry, should have felt manipulated. Instead, he laughed. You're unbelievable, he said. Is that a complaint? No, it's an observation. She kissed him, and he forgot why he'd been pretending to be upset. They spent that evening on the guest house couch. Victoria curled against his chest while some movie neither of them was watching played on the TV. It felt domestic, normal, like they were a couple instead of a secret. What happens when this work runs out? Ethan asked. I'll find more work. You can't keep inventing problems forever. Watch me. She said it like a joke, but Ethan heard the fear underneath. She was scared of what happened when he didn't have a reason to be here anymore. So was he. We could just tell people, he said. Victoria sat up. Tell them what? That we're together. Whatever this is. You know we can't do that. Why not? Because the moment this becomes public, everything changes. The media will destroy you. They'll dig up every mistake you've ever made, every late payment, every argument with your ex-wife. They'll make you look like a gold digger and me look like a fool. Maybe people would understand. People don't understand. They judge. And I can't afford to be judged right now. I'm in the middle of 3 major acquisitions. The board is already watching me for any sign of weakness. A scandal like this would give them exactly the ammunition they need to push me out. Ethan knew she was right. Didn't make it hurt any less. So we hide, he said. We hide, Victoria confirmed. For how long? I don't know. She leaned back against him, and they sat in silence while the movie played on. Outside, night had fallen completely. The estate felt like an island cut off from the rest of the world. Ethan's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, he checked it. 7 messages from Jenny. All urgent, all angry. Jenny, where are you? Jenny, you were supposed to pick up Sophie an hour ago. Jenny, I have plans, Ethan. I can't just wait around. Jenny, this is exactly the kind of shit I'm talking about. Jenny, answer your phone. Jenny, I'm documenting all of this. Jenny, you're such a deadbeat. Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd completely forgotten. It was his day to pick up Sophie. He was supposed to be there at 6. It was almost 8. I have to go, he said, standing up so fast Victoria nearly fell off the couch. What's wrong? I forgot to pick up my daughter. Fuck. He grabbed his keys, his phone, his jacket. Victoria followed him to the door. Ethan, wait. I can't. Jenny's going to use this. She's already building a case that I'm unfit, and I just gave her more ammunition. It was one mistake. You don't understand. With Jenny, there are no small mistakes. Everything gets magnified and weaponized. He kissed Victoria quickly, then ran to his truck. The engine coughed, sputtered, refused to start. No, come on! He tried again. Nothing. Victoria appeared beside the truck. Take my car. I can't. You don't have time to argue. Take it. She tossed him the keys to the Tesla. Ethan caught them on instinct. I'll get your truck looked at, Victoria said. Just go. Ethan ran to the Tesla, fumbled with the door, finally got it open. The car started silently. He'd never driven anything this expensive in his life. He didn't care. He just drove. He made it to Jenny's house in 15 minutes, running 2 red lights and breaking every speed limit between the estate and her neighborhood. Sophie was sitting on the front porch, small and alone, backpack beside her. Ethan's heart broke. He parked and ran to her. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She looked up at him with big eyes. You forgot me. I didn't forget you. I just lost track of time. I'm sorry, baby. Jenny appeared in the doorway. Lost track of time. That's rich. Jenny, please. No, you don't get to please me. You don't get to show up 90 minutes late driving some rich person's car and expect me to just let it slide. It was one time. It's never one time with you, Ethan. It's a pattern. You're unreliable. You always have been. Sophie stood up, grabbing her backpack. Can we just go, Dad? Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself. But Sophie was looking at him with those eyes that said she just wanted this to be over. Yeah, sweetheart, let's go. They walked to the Tesla together. Sophie climbed in, looking around at the expensive interior with wide eyes. Whose car is this? She asked. A friend's. Mine broke down. Must be a really good friend. Yeah, she is. They drove in silence for a few blocks. Then Sophie said quietly, Mom says you're going to lose custody. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's not true. She says you care more about work than me. Sophie, listen to me. That is absolutely not true. You are the most important thing in my entire life. Sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes we're late. Or we forget things. But that doesn't mean we don't care, do you understand? I guess. I love you more than anything, okay? Okay? She was quiet for the rest of the drive. When they got to Ethan's apartment, she went straight to her room without saying goodnight. Ethan stood in the kitchen staring at his phone. 12 missed calls from Jenny, 6 voicemails he didn't want to listen to, 1 message from Victoria. Victoria. Is everything okay? He wanted to say yes, wanted to pretend that everything was fine and this was all manageable. Instead, he typed, I don't know. He sat on the couch in the dark, listening to Sophie move around in her room, and wondered how he'd let himself get so distracted that he'd forgotten the one thing that actually mattered. His phone buzzed. Victoria, come back tomorrow. We'll figure it out. But Ethan wasn't sure there was anything to figure out. He'd spent weeks living in a fantasy, pretending that he could have this thing with Victoria and still be the father Sophie needed. Tonight proved he couldn't do both, and he knew which one he had to choose. Ethan didn't go back the next day. He sent Victoria a text at 6 in the morning before Sophie woke up, before he could talk himself out of it. Ethan, I need a few days, family stuff. I'm sorry. Her reply came immediately, like she'd been waiting. Victoria, don't apologize. Take whatever time you need. Victoria, your truck is fixed. New battery. I had it towed to your place. Victoria, just come back when you're ready. He stared at those messages for a long time. She'd fixed his truck. Of course she had, because that's what people with money did. They solved problems by throwing cash at them. It should have annoyed him. Instead, it just made everything worse. Sophie shuffled into the kitchen, still half asleep, dragging her stuffed dinosaur behind her. Is there breakfast? Yeah, baby. Cereal okay? Can you make pancakes? Ethan thought about Victoria's pancakes. Perfect golden circles with fresh berries. Nothing like the lumpy disasters he usually managed. How about waffles, he said. The freezer kind. Sophie climbed onto a chair. The freezer kind are good. He made her waffles and sat across from her while she ate, watching her carefully, looking for signs of damage from last night. From all the nights he'd been distracted, thinking about a woman in a mansion instead of the kid right in front of him. Dad? Sophie said through a mouthful of waffle. Yeah? Are you sad? The question hit him harder than it should have. Why do you think I'm sad? You have your sad face on. I didn't know I had a sad face. You do. You get all wrinkly here. She pointed at her own forehead. And you stop talking. Ethan forced a smile. I'm not sad, just tired. Mom says you're always tired because you work too much. Your mom says a lot of things. Sophie went back to her waffles. Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He flipped it over without looking. Probably Victoria. Probably worried. He couldn't deal with that right now. The day crawled by. He took Sophie to the park even though it was cold and threatening rain, pushed her on the swings until his arms ached, helped her climb the monkey bars, pretended everything was normal while his brain kept replaying that moment on Jenny's porch. Sophie sitting there alone, looking small and forgotten. That evening, after Sophie went to bed, Ethan finally looked at his phone. 7 messages from Victoria. He read them in order. Victoria. How's Sophie? Victoria. I keep thinking about what you said, about Jenny building a case. Victoria. Is there anything I can do? Victoria. I know you need space. I'm trying to give it to you. Victoria. But I miss you. Victoria. That sounds pathetic. Sorry. Victoria. Just let me know you're okay. He sat on the couch in the dark, phone screen glowing in his hand. He should write back, should say something. But what? That he missed her too? That every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face? That he couldn't stop thinking about how her hand felt in his? None of that mattered. What mattered was Sophie. What mattered was being the parent she deserved instead of some distracted mess who forgot to pick her up because he was too busy making out with a billionaire. His phone rang. Victoria. He stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hey, he said. You answered. She sounded relieved. I was starting to think you were avoiding me. I wasn't avoiding you. Liar. Okay, maybe a little. Silence stretched between them. Ethan could hear background noise on her end. Wind, maybe, or traffic. Where are you? He asked. On the deck, looking at the pool, thinking about you. Victoria, I know what you're going to say. That this is too complicated. That we should stop before someone gets hurt. That you need to focus on your daughter. All of that is true. I know, but it doesn't change how I feel. Ethan pressed his palm against his forehead. How you feel doesn't matter if it destroys your company, or gives my ex-wife ammunition to take away my kid. So what are you saying? That we're done? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ethan wanted to say yes, wanted to end this cleanly before it got messier, before someone actually got hurt. I don't know, he said instead. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I understand. I do. But Ethan, I need you to understand something too. These last few weeks with you have been the only time in 8 years I've felt like a real person. Not a CEO, not a brand, just me. And I don't want to lose that. You're not going to lose yourself just because I'm not around. You'd be surprised what you lose when you spend every day pretending to be someone you're not. Ethan knew exactly what she meant. He'd spent years pretending to be okay when he wasn't, pretending his life was fine when it was held together with duct tape and hope. I need time, he said, to figure out how to do this without screwing up everything else. Okay? Take your time. I'll be here. Victoria, I mean it. I'm not going anywhere. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan sat there with the dead phone pressed to his ear, wondering how he'd managed to make such a mess of something that had felt so simple a week ago. 3 days passed. Ethan took Sophie to school, picked her up, made dinner, helped with homework. Lived his normal life. Tried not to think about Victoria every 5 minutes. It didn't work. On the 4th day, Jenny called. Ethan almost didn't answer, but avoiding her just made things worse. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? About your living situation. About your work schedule. About whether you're actually capable of being a reliable parent. Ethan's jaw clenched. I'm a perfectly reliable parent. Really? Because Sophie told me you forgot to pick her up last week, left her sitting on my porch for 90 minutes. That was one time. One mistake. It's never one mistake with you, Ethan. It's a pattern. And I'm tired of pretending it's fine. What do you want, Jenny? I want you to agree to revised custody. I keep Sophie during the week. You get every other weekend. Ethan's heart stopped. Absolutely not. Then I'm filing with the court. And when I do, I'm going to bring up every late pickup, every missed payment, every time you've put your work ahead of our daughter. I've never put work ahead of Sophie. You sure about that? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been spending a lot of time at some fancy estate, working for some CEO. What's her name? Victoria something? Ice flooded Ethan's veins. How do you know about that? I have friends, Ethan. Friends who see things. Friends who talk. There's nothing to see. She's a client. I'm doing electrical work. Right. Electrical work. Is that what we're calling it? Jenny, I swear to you. Save it. I don't care what you're doing or who you're doing it with. I care about Sophie. And right now, Sophie needs stability you can't provide. She hung up before he could argue. Ethan stood in his kitchen, gripping the phone so hard his knuckles went white. Jenny knew. Somehow she knew. And if she knew, that meant other people knew, which meant it was only a matter of time before everyone knew. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Unknown. We should meet. I have information you need. Ethan. Who is this? Unknown. Someone who knows what's really happening at Victoria Hale's estate. Coffee, tomorrow. 10 a.m. Morton's on 5th. Come alone. Ethan stared at the message. Every instinct screamed trap. But if someone out there had information, if they knew something that could hurt Victoria or give Jenny more ammunition, he needed to know what it was. He texted back. Ethan, I'll be there. The next morning, Ethan dropped Sophie at school and drove to Morton's. It was one of those overpriced coffee shops where a regular coffee cost $7 and came with a lecture about fair trade beans. He spotted the guy immediately. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of face that made a living being forgettable. He sat in the back corner, already nursing an espresso. Ethan walked over. You the one who texted me? Ethan Cole, sit down. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself. The man slid a manila folder across the table. You should look at this. Ethan didn't touch it. Who are you? My name's Marcus Webb. I'm a private investigator. I've been watching Victoria Hale's estate for the past 3 weeks. Who hired you? That's confidential, but let's just say there are people very interested in Ms. Hale's personal life, especially when it involves a certain handyman who's been spending a suspicious amount of time at her property. Ethan's stomach turned. There's nothing suspicious about it. I'm doing repair work. Really? Because these photos tell a different story. Marcus flipped open the folder. Inside were surveillance photos. Ethan and Victoria on the guest house deck. Ethan and Victoria standing close in the kitchen. Ethan and Victoria kissing against the counter. The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Where did you get these? Ethan asked quietly. Long-range lens, thermal imaging, modern surveillance makes privacy pretty much impossible. What do you want? I don't want anything. I'm just doing my job. But my client, they want you to know that if this continues, these photos go public, social media, gossip sites, news outlets, everywhere. Your client can go to hell, probably. But that won't stop the photos from leaking. And when they do, Ms. Hale's reputation gets destroyed. Her board will force her out. Her competitors will tear her apart. And you? You'll become the gold digger who brought down a billionaire. Marcus closed the folder and slid it toward Ethan. Keep them. Consider them a warning. Walk away now, quietly, and this all disappears. Keep seeing her, and everyone suffers. Who hired you? Ethan asked again. Does it matter? Could be business rivals. Could be someone on her board who wants her gone. Could be your ex-wife. Could be all three working together. The point is, the photos exist, and they will become public unless you end this. Marcus stood up, straightened his tie. You seem like a decent guy. You've got a kid to think about. Is one woman really worth losing everything? He walked out without waiting for an answer. Ethan sat down hard in the chair, staring at the folder. His hand shook when he opened it again. The photos looked worse the second time. More damning, more real. He pulled out his phone and called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. Ethan, what's wrong? We need to talk, now, in person. I'm in a meeting. Can it wait until... No, it can't wait. Something in his voice must have convinced her. Give me 20 minutes. I'll meet you at the guest house. Ethan drove to the estate on autopilot. The security gate opened smoothly. The gate he'd fixed that first day. The day that started all of this. He parked near the guest house and sat in his truck, staring at the folder on the passenger seat. He should burn it, should destroy the photos and pretend this conversation never happened. But that wouldn't make them go away. Victoria appeared 15 minutes later, walking fast across the stone path. She was wearing a black dress and heels, full CEO mode, but her face was worried. What happened? She asked the moment she reached him. Ethan handed her the folder without speaking. She opened it, went very still, flipped through the photos one by one, her expression getting harder with each image. How long have they been watching us? She asked. 3 weeks, apparently. Who hired them? He wouldn't say. Could be anyone, your board, your competitors, my ex-wife, take your pick. Victoria closed the folder. Her hands were steady, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. What did they want? For me to walk away. Stop seeing you. If I do, the photos stay private. If I don't, they leak everything. Blackmail. Yeah. Victoria looked at the folder like it was a snake. We knew this could happen. We talked about this. Talking about it and having actual proof are different things. So what do you want to do? Ethan wanted to scream, wanted to punch something, wanted to rewind time to before that first kiss and make a different choice. I don't know, he said. But Jenny already knows something. She called yesterday threatening to take me to court for custody. She mentioned your name. Someone's feeding her information. So they're coming at both of us. Classic pressure tactic. This isn't a business deal, Victoria. This is my daughter. If Jenny gets full custody because of some scandal, I lose everything that actually matters. Victoria flinched like he'd hit her. Right, of course. Sophie comes first. That's not what I meant. No, you're right. She should come first. I understand that. But she didn't understand. Ethan could see it in her eyes. The hurt. The feeling of being second place. Again. I'm not trying to hurt you, Ethan said. I'm trying to figure out how to protect everyone. You can't. That's the problem. Someone's going to get hurt no matter what we do. They stood there in the driveway, the folder of photos between them like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Maybe we should stop, Victoria said quietly, before this gets worse. Is that what you want? No, but what I want doesn't matter anymore. Ethan's chest ached. Victoria, I mean it. I've spent my whole life making hard choices. sacrificing things I wanted for things I needed. This isn't any different. It feels different. Because it is different. She looked at him with those sharp eyes that saw everything. I love you. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But I do. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. She loved him. She'd actually said it. You can't say that right now, he said. Why not? Because it makes this harder? Everything about this is already hard. Because if you say it, I'm going to say it back. And then neither of us will be able to walk away. Victoria's expression cracked. Just for a second. Just enough for him to see the real fear underneath. Then don't say it, she whispered. Just go. Walk away. Protect your daughter. Let me deal with whoever's trying to destroy me. I'm not going to let you deal with this alone. You don't have a choice. Ethan stepped closer, took her face in his hands. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I don't have to do anything except figure out who's behind this and stop them before they hurt either of us. Victoria closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. You can't stop this. Money can't stop this. Power can't stop this. Once those photos leak, it's over. Then we leak them first. Her eyes snapped open. What? You heard me. We control the narrative. We go public on our terms, not theirs. Ethan, that's insane. The media will crucify us. Maybe. But at least we'd be doing it together. At least we'd have a chance to tell the truth instead of letting them make up whatever story sells clicks. Victoria pulled back, shaking her head. You don't understand what that would mean. The scrutiny, the invasion. Every detail of your life becomes public property. Every mistake you've ever made gets magnified and twisted. Your ex-wife would have a field day. She's already having a field day. She already knows. Might as well stop hiding. And what about Sophie? What about when she's old enough to Google her father and finds 1,000 articles about him sleeping with some rich CEO? That stopped Ethan cold. He hadn't thought about that. About Sophie years from now, reading headlines, seeing photos, dealing with the fallout of choices he made before she was old enough to understand. Then what do? He asked. Just let them win? We do what makes sense. You walk away. I issue a statement saying you were a contractor who did excellent work. End of story. The photos can't prove anything if we're not actually together anymore. You want me to just disappear from your life. I want you to protect your daughter. By abandoning you. Yes. Ethan felt something break inside him. I can't do that. You have to. Victoria, please. Her voice cracked. Please don't make this harder than it already is. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing is us staying together and fighting this. No. The right thing is protecting the people who depend on us. You have Sophie. I have 3,000 employees. We can't be selfish. She was right. Ethan hated that she was right. But she was. So this is it, he said. We just end it. We end it before someone else ends it for us. Victoria picked up the folder of photos, held it against her chest like armor. I'll handle the investigator. I'll figure out who hired him and deal with it. You just focus on your daughter. What about us? There is no us. Not anymore. There can't be. She turned and walked toward the main house. Ethan wanted to follow, wanted to grab her and kiss her and tell her they'd figure this out together. But he didn't. He just stood there watching her walk away, knowing she was right, but hating every second of it. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Victoria. I love you. I needed to say it at least once where you can't argue. Victoria. Now please leave before I change my mind. Ethan got in his truck and drove away. The security gate closed behind him with a final metallic click. That night he sat on his couch staring at nothing. Sophie was asleep. The apartment was quiet. His phone sat on the coffee table, dark and silent. He kept thinking about Victoria's face when she'd said she loved him. The way her voice had cracked when she told him to leave. The way she'd held that folder like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He'd walked away, done the right thing, protected his daughter from the scandal that would have destroyed both their lives. So why did it feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life? His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Unknown. Smart choice. The photos stay buried. You stay quiet. Everyone wins. Unknown. Oh, and one more thing. Stay away from Victoria Hale. Permanently. We'll be watching. Ethan stared at the message, Rage built in his chest, hot and sharp. They thought they'd won, thought they could threaten him into compliance, and he'd just accept it. They didn't know him very well. He opened a new message, typed carefully. Ethan, who hired the investigator? He didn't expect an answer, but 30 seconds later, his phone rang. Blocked number. Hello? Ethan answered. Mr. Cole. A woman's voice, smooth, professional, vaguely familiar. This is Rebecca Chen. I'm on the board of directors for Hale Technologies. Ethan's blood went cold. What do you want? I want to make sure you understand the situation. Victoria Hale is brilliant, but she's also distracted, emotional. She's making decisions based on feelings instead of data. That's dangerous for a company our size. So you're trying to force her out. I'm trying to protect shareholder value. And right now, Victoria's personal life is threatening that value. If she continues making poor choices, the board will have no option but to remove her from the CEO position. And you hired someone to spy on her. I hired someone to gather information. What I do with that information depends entirely on Victoria's behavior going forward. This is blackmail. This is business. Stay away from her, and the photos stay private. Everyone moves on. Victoria keeps her position. You keep your daughter. Simple. And if I don't? Rebecca's laugh was cold. Then you both lose everything. Your choice, Mr. Cole. She hung up. Ethan sat there, phone pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. A board member. Someone Victoria probably worked with every day. Someone she trusted. He opened his messages and typed fast. Ethan, I know who hired the investigator. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning. Victoria's reply came immediately. Victoria. You're supposed to be staying away. Ethan. Change of plans, Rebecca Chen. She's the one. Victoria. What? Ethan. She just called me. Admitted everything. She's trying to force you out. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Victoria. My house, 7 a.m. Use the service entrance. Ethan. I'll be there. He set his phone down and stared at the ceiling. This was dangerous, probably stupid, definitely going to make everything worse. But he was done running, done letting other people make his choices for him. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. Ethan arrived at 6:45 before the sun fully cleared the hills. The estate looked different in the early morning light, less like a fortress, more like a prison. He parked near the service entrance and texted Victoria that he was there. She opened the door herself. No security, no staff, just her, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, looking like she hadn't slept. You look terrible, Ethan said. Thanks. You're not exactly fresh either. They stood in the doorway, neither quite ready to cross whatever line they'd drawn the day before. Finally, Victoria stepped aside. Come in. I made coffee. Of course you did. The guest house felt different now, smaller, like the walls had moved closer together while he was gone. Victoria poured 2 mugs and they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Professional distance, safe distance. Tell me exactly what Rebecca said, Victoria said. Ethan repeated the conversation word for word, watched Victoria's face harden with each detail. By the time he finished, her jaw was clenched so tight he could see the muscle jumping. That manipulative snake, Victoria said quietly. You know her well? I've known her for 6 years. She was one of my father's picks for the board. I kept her on because she's smart and ruthless, and I thought I could trust her. Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Guess I was wrong. What's her angle? Why try to force you out? Control, money, pride, take your pick. Rebecca's been pushing for the company to go in a different direction, more aggressive acquisitions, higher risk investments. I've been blocking her at every turn because her strategies are reckless. This is probably her way of removing the obstacle. By destroying your reputation, by making me look unstable. A CEO who can't control her personal life can't be trusted to control a billion-dollar company. That's how the story will go. Ethan set down his coffee. So we prove she's behind it. Expose her. With what evidence? A phone call she'll deny ever happened? Marcus Webb won't testify against a paying client, and even if we could prove it, the damage is done. The photos exist. The story exists. Rebecca just needs to pull the trigger. Then we pull it first. Victoria looked at him. You said that yesterday. You're serious about going public. I'm serious about not letting her win. Ethan, you don't understand what you're suggesting. The moment we confirm there's a relationship, every news outlet in the country will run with it. They'll dig into your background, your divorce, your finances. Every parking ticket, every late payment, every argument with your ex-wife becomes a headline. Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide, and even if you don't, they'll invent something. That's what they do. Ethan leaned forward. So what's your plan? Just wait for Rebecca to release the photos on her timeline? Give her all the power? My plan is to handle this quietly, legally. I'll have my lawyers investigate Rebecca, find proof she hired Webb, build a case for her removal from the board. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. We don't have months. She made it clear, stay away from you or the photos leak. You think she's just going to sit around waiting while your lawyers build a case? Victoria stood up and walked to the window. The sun was higher now, burning off the morning fog. I don't know what you want me to say. That you're right? That we should just throw ourselves to the wolves and hope we come out alive. I want you to fight. You built an empire from nothing. You faced down executives twice your age and made them respect you. But now one board member threatens you and you're just going to hide? Victoria spun around. I'm not hiding. I'm being strategic. You're being scared. Of course I'm scared. You think I want to watch them tear apart everything I've built? You think I want to see my company's stock price tank because some gossip site runs a story about me sleeping with the handyman? The word hung between them. Handyman. Like that's all he was. All he'd ever be. Is that what I am to you? Ethan asked quietly. Victoria's face fell. No, that's not... I didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? Ethan, please. Because that's what they'll call me. That's the story, right? Poor billionaire slumming it with the help. I get it. Stop. Victoria crossed the room and grabbed his hands. You know that's not what you are to me. You know it. Then what am I? She looked at him with those eyes that saw everything. You're the only person in 8 years who's made me feel like I'm worth more than my bank account. You're the first man who looked at me and saw a person instead of an opportunity. You're... Her voice broke. She stopped, swallowed hard, tried again. You're someone I could love if the world would let me. Ethan pulled her close. She came willingly, pressing her face against his chest. He could feel her shoulders shaking. The world doesn't get to decide, he said into her hair. Yes, it does. That's exactly how it works. They stood like that for a long time. The coffee grew cold on the table. Outside, birds started their morning routine. The world kept turning while they tried to figure out how to exist in it together. Finally, Victoria pulled back. Her eyes were red but dry. I have a board meeting in 2 hours. Rebecca will be there, looking at me, knowing what she knows, waiting for me to crack. Don't give her the satisfaction. Easier said than done. Then tell her you know. Victoria blinked. What? At the meeting, in front of everyone, tell them exactly what Rebecca did. Hiring investigators. Blackmail. The whole thing. Without proof? Your word against hers. Let the board decide who they believe. That's insane. Maybe. But it's better than letting her control the narrative. Victoria walked to the window again, thinking. Ethan could see her brain working, running scenarios, calculating risks. If I do this, she said slowly, and I can't prove it, Rebecca will claim I'm having a breakdown. She'll use it as evidence that I'm unfit to lead. And if you don't do it, she'll release the photos anyway, and you're out regardless. Some choice? Yeah, welcome to my world. Sometimes all the options are terrible, and you just pick the least terrible one. Victoria almost smiled. Is that your philosophy on life? It's gotten me this far. She turned to face him. If I do this, if I actually call Rebecca out in front of the board, I need you to be okay with whatever happens next. Because the second I make this accusation, the photos will leak. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But they'll leak. And when they do, your life becomes a circus. I can handle a circus. What about Sophie? Can she handle it? That question stopped him. Sophie, 7 years old, dinosaur backpack, terrible knock-knock jokes. She didn't deserve to have her life turned upside down because her father couldn't walk away from an impossible situation. I'll talk to her, Ethan said. I'll explain it in a way she can understand. And Jenny? What happens when she sees the photos and realizes she has exactly the ammunition she needs? Ethan's chest tightened. Jenny would go nuclear. There was no version of this where she didn't weaponize every detail in court. Then I'll fight her, he said. I'll fight for custody with everything I have. You could lose. I could. But I'm tired of making decisions based on fear. I'm tired of letting other people control my life because I'm too scared to stand up for myself. Victoria studied his face like she was memorizing it. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She crossed the room in 3 steps and kissed him. Hard, desperate, like she was trying to prove something to both of them. When they broke apart, Ethan was breathing hard. Okay, Victoria said. Let's burn it all down. She left for the board meeting at 8:30. Ethan stayed at the estate, pacing the guest house like a caged animal. His phone sat on the counter, silent, waiting. At 10:15 it buzzed. Victoria. I did it. Confronted Rebecca in front of everyone. Ethan. And? Victoria. She denied everything. Called me paranoid. Said I was having a mental breakdown. Ethan. Did anyone believe her? Victoria. Half the room looked concerned. The other half looked uncomfortable. No one knew what to believe. Ethan. What happens now? Victoria. Now we wait for the fallout. The fallout came faster than either of them expected. By noon, gossip sites were running stories about tension on the Hale Technologies board. By 2 p.m., business reporters were speculating about Victoria's mental state. By 4 p.m., the photos leaked. Not all of them, just 2. But they were enough. Victoria and Ethan on the guest house deck, standing close. Victoria and Ethan kissing in the kitchen, his hand on her waist. The headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire CEO's secret romance with handyman. Victoria Hale caught in compromising position with employee. Hale. Technologies in chaos as CEO's personal life explodes. Ethan watched the story spread in real time, his phone buzzing nonstop with notifications. Text messages from people he barely knew, calls from reporters who'd somehow gotten his number, friend requests on social media from accounts that were obviously fake. And then Jenny called. He stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. I assume you've seen the news, she said. Ice in her voice. Yeah. A billionaire, Ethan. You're sleeping with a billionaire while you can barely afford child support. It's not like that. Of course it is. You found yourself a sugar mama, and now the whole world knows what a joke you are. Jenny, I'm filing tomorrow. Emergency custody hearing. And when the judge sees these photos, sees the headlines, sees what kind of environment you're creating for our daughter, they're going to give me exactly what I want. You can't do this. Watch me. I told you to be reliable. I told you to be responsible. Instead, you've been sneaking around some mansion playing house with a woman who could buy and sell you 1,000 times over. What kind of example is that for Sophie? Ethan's hand shook. I've been a good father. The best father I know how to be. That's not good enough. It never has been. She hung up. Ethan sat down hard on the couch. His phone kept buzzing. More messages, more calls, more strangers wanting pieces of a story they didn't understand. He turned the phone off. An hour later, Victoria came back. She looked shell-shocked. Her perfect CEO armor was cracked, and he could see the exhaustion underneath. They're calling for my resignation, she said without preamble. The board? 4 members, including Rebecca, obviously. They're saying I've created a hostile work environment by engaging in inappropriate relationships with contractors. That's garbage. That's corporate politics. She sat next to him. My lawyers say we can fight it, but it'll take time and money, and it'll get ugly. Everything's already ugly. It's going to get worse. The reporters are camped outside the gate. Drones are flying over the property. Someone tried to bribe my security guard for details about our relationship. Ethan took her hand. I'm sorry. For what? For not walking away when I should have. For making this harder. Victoria squeezed his hand. You didn't make anything harder. You made it real. For the first time in years, something in my life felt real. They sat in silence while the world outside lost its mind over 2 people who just wanted to be together. Jenny's filing for emergency custody, Ethan said. Tomorrow. Victoria closed her eyes. Of course she is. She's going to use this, all of it. The photos, the headlines, everything. And she's probably going to win. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. I'm a broke handyman who forgot to pick up his kid because he was too busy fooling around with his rich client. How's that going to look in court? It's going to look like a man who's being persecuted for being human, for having feelings, for taking a chance on happiness. Judges don't care about happiness. They care about stability. And right now I'm the least stable thing in Sophie's life. Victoria stood up abruptly. No, I'm not letting you do this. I'm not letting you spiral into some self-defeating prophecy where you lose everything because you think you deserve to lose. Victoria T., you're a good father. You love your daughter. You work hard. You're reliable and honest and kind. The fact that you also happen to care about me doesn't erase any of that. Tell that to the judge. I will. I'll testify if I have to. I'll tell them exactly the kind of man you are. That'll just make it worse. The billionaire CEO defending her handyman boyfriend in family court? The headlines alone would bury us. Then let them bury us. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting people like Rebecca and Jenny control our lives because they have weapons and we're too scared to fight back. She was magnificent when she was angry, fierce and certain and completely unbreakable. You know there's no happy ending here, Ethan said quietly. I don't care about happy endings. I care about what's right. Sometimes what's right still loses. Then we lose fighting, together. Ethan stood and pulled her close. She melted into him, all that fierce certainty softening into something more vulnerable. I love you, he said into her hair. I should have said it before. I love you too, even though this is a disaster. Especially because it's a disaster. They held each other while the sun tracked across the sky and the reporters shouted questions from outside the gate, and the whole world tried to tear them apart. 3 days later, Ethan sat in a courthouse waiting room, wearing a suit he'd borrowed from a friend and shoes that pinched his feet. His lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, who worked pro bono for the Legal Aid Society, sat beside him reviewing notes. Jenny's lawyer is going to bring up the photos, Patricia said. We need to be ready for that. I'm ready. Are you? Because when they put those images up on a screen and ask you to explain why you were kissing a billionaire while your daughter sat in aftercare, you need to have an answer that doesn't make you look like an irresponsible playboy. I'm not a playboy. I'm just a guy who fell in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. Right person, wrong circumstances, maybe. But we can't say that. We need to say it was a brief lapse in judgment that's over now. You've ended the relationship. You're focused entirely on Sophie. You've learned from your mistakes. Ethan looked at her. Except it's not over. And I haven't learned anything except that I'm tired of apologizing for caring about someone. Patricia closed her folder. Ethan, listen to me. If you go in there and tell the judge you're still involved with Victoria Hale, you will lose custody. Full stop. Jenny's lawyers will paint you as a man who prioritizes a celebrity relationship over his daughter's well-being. Is that what you want? No. Then tell me what I want to hear. Tell me the relationship is over. Tell me you're committed to being the father Sophie needs. Ethan thought about Victoria, about the way she'd looked at him 3 days ago when she said they should lose fighting together, about the fact that she was probably sitting in her own meeting right now, being pressured to resign from the company she'd built from nothing. The relationship isn't over, he said, but I am committed to being the father Sophie needs. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. The court will think they are. Then the court is wrong. Patricia looked at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. Story of my life. The courtroom was smaller than Ethan expected. Fluorescent lights, cheap wood paneling, chairs that wobbled. Jenny sat on the other side with her lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit who probably cost more per hour than Ethan made in a week. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and an expression that said she'd seen every variety of human mess and wasn't impressed by any of it. Jenny's lawyer went first. He presented the photos, showed the headlines, painted a picture of a father too distracted by a glamorous relationship to remember his own child. Mr. Cole left his 7-year-old daughter waiting alone for 90 minutes while he was at Miss Hale's estate, the lawyer said. This is a pattern of negligence that puts Sophie at risk. It was one time, Ethan said before Patricia could stop him. The judge looked at him. You'll have your turn to speak, Mr. Cole. Jenny took the stand next. She cried. Actual tears. Talked about how worried she was. How Ethan had always been unreliable. How Sophie needed stability and structure and a parent who put her first. It was a performance. A good one. The judge took notes. Then it was Ethan's turn. Patricia asked him the easy questions first. His work schedule. His relationship with Sophie. His commitment to being a good father. Ethan answered honestly. Talked about bedtime stories and homework help and dinosaur facts. Talked about making waffles and driving her to school and being there for every scraped knee and bad dream. Then Jenny's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Cole, can you explain these photographs? The photos appeared on a screen. Ethan and Victoria, frozen in moments that looked worse than they'd felt in real time. That's me with Victoria Hale, Ethan said. And what is the nature of your relationship with Ms. Hale? We're together. Patricia's head dropped into her hands. Together, Jenny's lawyer repeated. Can you be more specific? We're in a relationship. We care about each other. Despite the fact that she's a billionaire CEO and you're a handyman barely making ends meet. Yeah, despite that. And you don't think there's anything inappropriate about this power imbalance? The only thing inappropriate is people assuming money determines worth. The lawyer smiled like Ethan had just walked into a trap. Mr. Cole, on the evening of March 15th, you forgot to pick up your daughter from your ex-wife's home because you were at Ms. Hale's estate. Is that correct? Yes. And where exactly were you when you should have been picking up Sophie? Ethan looked at Jenny, at the judge, at Patricia, who was probably drafting her withdrawal from the case in her head. I was in the guest house with Victoria. I lost track of time. It was a mistake. A mistake that left a 7-year-old child sitting alone on a porch for 90 minutes. Yes. And if you maintain this relationship with Ms. Hale, can you guarantee it won't happen again? Ethan wanted to say yes, wanted to promise he'd never screw up again, but he'd spent enough time lying to himself. No, he said, I can't guarantee that, because I'm human. Humans make mistakes, but I can guarantee that Sophie is the most important thing in my life, that I love her more than anything, and that one mistake doesn't erase 3 years of being the parent who shows up every single day. The lawyer sat down, looking satisfied. The judge looked at Ethan over her reading glasses. Mr. Cole, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Ethan stood up. Yeah, I do. Patricia tried to pull him back down. He ignored her. I'm not a perfect parent. I don't have a lot of money. I work weird hours, and sometimes I'm tired and sometimes I mess up. But I'm there. Every day. Every soccer practice and school concert and parent-teacher conference. I read bedtime stories until my voice gives out. I help with math homework even though I barely remember fractions. I make terrible waffles and I let her stay up too late on weekends, and I probably let her watch too much TV. He looked at Jenny, but I never stopped loving her. I never stopped trying. And yeah, I fell in love with someone. Someone who makes me want to be better. Someone who reminds me that I'm worth more than my bank account or my job title. If that makes me a bad parent, then I guess I'm a bad parent. But Sophie deserves to have a father who believes he's worth something, who believes love is worth fighting for. The courtroom was quiet. The judge wrote something on her notepad. I'll take this under advisement. Decision will be issued within 7 days. The gavel came down. Ethan walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sunshine. Patricia followed, shaking her head. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen, she said. Probably both. You know you probably just lost, right? Yeah, I know. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Victoria. How did it go? Ethan. About as well as expected. I told the truth. Victoria. All of it? Ethan. All of it. Victoria. I'm proud of you. Ethan. Even if I lose Sophie? Victoria. You won't lose her. I won't let that happen. Ethan stared at the message, wanting to believe it, knowing it was probably impossible. He drove to the estate without thinking about it. The reporters were still camped outside, but fewer now. The story was getting old. They'd move on to the next scandal soon enough. Victoria met him at the door. She'd been crying. He could tell even though she'd tried to hide it. My lawyers say I should resign, she said, before the board votes me out. It'll look better. Are you going to? I don't know. Part of me wants to fight. Part of me is just tired of fighting. I get that. They sat on the couch. The same couch where this had all started, where they'd had breakfast and coffee and conversations that felt normal, even though nothing about their situation was normal. What happens now? Victoria asked. We wait for the custody decision, for your board vote, for whatever else the universe wants to throw at us. And then? I don't know. I really don't. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. I thought love was supposed to make things better. Maybe it does, eventually, after everything else falls apart. They sat in silence while the afternoon faded into evening and the future remained terrifyingly uncertain. 7 days felt like 7 years. Ethan went through the motions, dropped Sophie at school, picked her up, made dinner, helped with homework, pretended everything was normal while his phone stayed silent and the custody decision hung over him like a blade. Sophie knew something was wrong. Kids always knew. Are you and Mom fighting again? She asked one night over mac and cheese. When are we not fighting? Ethan tried to smile. It didn't work. She says I might have to live with her all the time now. Ethan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. She told you that? She said you made bad choices, that you have a girlfriend who's famous and it's not good for me. Sophie, is it true? Do you have a girlfriend? Ethan set down his fork. He'd been dreading this conversation, had rehearsed a dozen different versions in his head. None of them felt right. Yeah, he said. I do. Her name's Victoria. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she like dinosaurs? That almost made him laugh. I don't know. I never asked. Sophie pushed her mac and cheese around her plate. Mom says rich people don't care about normal people, that they just use them and throw them away. Your mom is wrong about a lot of things. But what if she's right? What if your girlfriend gets bored and leaves and then I don't get to see you anymore because of her? Ethan got up and knelt beside Sophie's chair, looked her straight in the eyes. Listen to me. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is more important to me than you. Not Victoria, not work, not anything. You're my whole world, okay? But what if the judge says I have to live with Mom? Then I'll visit every chance I get, and I'll call you every night, and I'll fight every single day to get you back. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to live with Mom all the time. She's always mad. And she doesn't know how to make the voices for bedtime stories. Ethan pulled her into a hug, felt her small body shake with sobs. His own eyes burned, but he forced the tears back. One of them had to be strong. I know, baby. I know. They stayed like that until Sophie's crying slowed, until the mac and cheese was cold and the evening had gone dark outside the window. Later, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan sat on his couch staring at his phone. No messages from the court. No updates from Patricia. Nothing. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Victoria. Board voted today 6-3 for me to accept my resignation. Ethan's stomach dropped. Ethan. You resigned? Victoria. Not yet. I told them I needed 48 hours to decide. Ethan. What are you going to do? Victoria. I don't know. Part of me wants to burn the whole thing down on my way out. Part of me wants to just walk away quietly. Ethan. What does your gut say? Victoria. My gut is tired. Ethan. Then maybe it's time to listen to it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Victoria. Can I see you? I know we said we'd be careful, but I just need to see you. Ethan. Sophie's asleep. I can't leave her. Victoria. Right, of course. Sorry. Ethan looked at his daughter's closed bedroom door, looked at his phone, made a decision that was probably stupid. Ethan. Give me 20 minutes. I'll come to you. He called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher who sometimes watched Sophie when Ethan was desperate. She answered on the 3rd ring. It's late, Ethan. I know. I'm sorry. Emergency. Can you sit with Sophie for an hour? She's already asleep. You just be here in case she wakes up. Mrs. Chen sighed. 1 hour, not a minute more. Thank you. I owe you. You owe me about 15 favors at this point. But who's counting? Ethan drove to the estate with the windows down, letting the cold air keep him awake. The reporters were gone now. The story had died down. Yesterday's scandal was today's forgotten news. Victoria was waiting in the guest house. She looked smaller somehow, like the past week had physically diminished her. She wore jeans and an old t-shirt, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. She looked more real than he'd ever seen her. "You came," she said. "You asked." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, held on like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm going to resign," she said into his chest. "Tomorrow. I'm done fighting." "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Ethan pulled back enough to see her face. "What happens after?" "I don't know. I've been CEO for so long I don't remember who I am without it." "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you get to figure it out." Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. "Figure out what? How to be a failed executive? How to be the cautionary tale they teach in business schools? How to be Victoria. Just Victoria. Not the CEO. Not the empire. Just you." She looked at him with eyes that were too bright. "I don't know if I know how to be just me." "Then learn. You're smart. You'll figure it out." They sat on the couch, the same couch where they'd had breakfast and coffee and conversations that felt stolen from a different life. "What about you?" Victoria asked. "Any word on custody?" "Nothing yet. Should be soon." "And if you lose?" "Then I lose, and I deal with it, and I keep being her father in whatever way they let me." Victoria took his hand. "I'm sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't been so selfish. If I just let you go that first day." "Stop. This isn't your fault. It's not my fault either. It's just life. Sometimes life doesn't care what we want." That's a depressing philosophy. It's a realistic one. They sat in silence. Outside, the pool lights cast blue patterns on the walls. The same patterns Ethan had watched 100 times while working here. Back when this was just a job. Back when Victoria was just a client. Back before everything got complicated. "I love you," Victoria said quietly. "I know this is a mess and we're both losing everything, but I love you." "I love you too." What do we do with that? With loving each other when the world won't let us be together? Ethan didn't have an answer. He just held her hand and wished things were different. His phone alarm went off. 1 hour. He had to get back to Sophie. "I have to go," he said. Victoria nodded. "I know." They stood at the door. Ethan kissed her, soft, gentle, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her lips. "Whatever happens," he said, "with the board or the custody thing or any of it, this was real. What we had was real." Past tense? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Victoria's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "Go, before I ask you to stay and ruin everything even more." Ethan drove home through empty streets. Mrs. Chen was asleep on his couch when he got there. He woke her gently, thanked her, walked her to her apartment next door. Then he sat alone in the dark and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The custody decision came 2 days later. Patricia called at 9 in the morning. Ethan was making Sophie breakfast. Frozen waffles. Again. "The judge made her ruling," Patricia said. Ethan's heart stopped. "And? You keep primary custody. Jenny gets every other weekend plus 1 weeknight dinner per week." The relief hit him so hard he had to sit down. "Say that again." "You won, Ethan. The judge said that while your relationship choices were questionable, there was no evidence of neglect or abuse. She noted that you've been the primary caregiver for 3 years and that Sophie's school records show stability and consistent parental involvement." "I won." "You won." Ethan closed his eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. You did this yourself. That speech you gave in court about being there every day, that's what convinced her." After Patricia hung up, Ethan just sat there holding his phone. Sophie looked at him from across the kitchen table. "Dad, are you okay?" "Yeah, baby, I'm better than okay." "Did something good happen?" "Something really good. You're staying with me, just like always." Sophie's face lit up. "Really?" "Really." She jumped out of her chair and hugged him so hard he couldn't breathe. Ethan hugged her back, feeling tears he'd been holding for days finally break free. "I love you, Soph." "I love you too, Dad." His phone buzzed. "Jenny. Jenny. This isn't over." Ethan. "Yeah, it is." He blocked her number. Should have done it years ago. Then he texted Victoria. "Ethan. I won. I got Sophie. Her response came immediately. Victoria, I'm so happy for you. Ethan, what about you? Did you resign? Victoria, tomorrow. Press conference at 2 p.m. Want to watch me self-destruct in real time? Ethan, I'll be there. The press conference was held at Hale Technologies headquarters, downtown. Ethan stood in the back of the room, trying to be invisible among the reporters and cameras and executives in expensive suits. Victoria walked to the podium at exactly 2 o'clock. She wore a navy suit, hair perfect, makeup flawless, full CEO armor one last time. Thank you all for coming, she said. Her voice was steady, controlled. I'm here to announce that effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Hale Technologies. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Victoria waited for the noise to die down. This company has been in my life for 8 years, but recent events have made it clear that my presence has become a distraction. The board deserves to focus on business, not tabloid stories. Our employees deserve leadership that isn't constantly under scrutiny, and I deserve to remember who I am outside of this job. More questions. Victoria ignored them. I want to be clear about something. The stories you've read about my personal life are largely true. I did have a relationship with a contractor who worked on my property. His name is Ethan Cole, and I'm not ashamed of that relationship. I'm not ashamed of caring about someone who treated me like a person instead of a brand. Ethan's breath caught. She was really doing this, owning it publicly. Ethan is a good man, a good father, a person who works hard and loves deeply and deserves better than to be called a gold digger by strangers who don't know him. If you're going to write stories about this, at least get that part right. Victoria paused, looked directly at the camera. I came into this company when my father died. I was 24, I was scared, I was grieving, and I built something I'm proud of. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that success isn't the same thing as happiness. That power isn't the same thing as peace. She looked down at her notes, looked back up. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe I'll start something new. Maybe I'll disappear for a while. Maybe I'll figure out who Victoria Hale is when she's not running a billion-dollar company. But whatever I do, I'm going to do it as myself, not as a brand, not as a commodity, just as a person who made some mistakes and some good choices and is trying to do better. Victoria stepped away from the podium, didn't take questions, just walked out while reporters shouted after her. Ethan waited outside the building. She emerged 20 minutes later, still in the suit but looking lighter somehow, freer. You came, she said. You asked. Victoria looked around. Reporters were already filing out of the building. Someone would spot them any second. Walk with me, she said. They walked. Just two people on a city sidewalk, past coffee shops and office buildings and street vendors selling hot dogs. Nobody recognized them. Nobody cared. That was brave, Ethan said. What you said in there? It was honest. I'm tired of lying. What happens now? With the company? Rebecca probably takes over as interim CEO. The board will hire someone permanent within a few months. The stock price will stabilize. Life goes on. I meant with you. Victoria stopped walking, looked at him. I don't know. For the first time in my adult life, I have no plan, no strategy, no 5-year roadmap. It's terrifying and kind of exciting at the same time. Sounds healthy. Does it? Because mostly it just feels like falling. Ethan took her hand. Right there on the sidewalk, not caring who saw. Then fall, he said. I'll catch you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. What if you can't? Then we both fall, and we figure out how to get back up, together. She kissed him, right there in front of everyone. A long, slow kiss that said everything they'd been too scared to say out loud. When they broke apart, a few people were staring. One person had their phone out, probably recording. Ethan didn't care. I need to tell you something, Victoria said. Okay. That job offer you mentioned, the coastal resort, is it still available? Ethan blinked. Maybe? Why? Because I bought a house 3 hours north, right on the beach. I signed the papers yesterday. You bought a beach house? A small one, 3 bedrooms. Needs a lot of work. I thought maybe you could help me fix it up. Ethan stared at her. You're moving to the coast. I'm starting over. Somewhere nobody knows me. Somewhere I can figure out who I am without all this noise. She squeezed his hand. And I was hoping you'd come with me. Victoria, I know it's crazy. I know you have Sophie and custody and a life here, but the schools up there are good. There's work for contractors. It's quiet and calm, and nothing like this city. We could have a real life, a normal life. Nothing about us is normal. So we make our own normal. We build something that works for us instead of trying to fit into what everyone else thinks we should be. Ethan thought about his apartment, his truck, his life in this city that had never quite felt like home. Then he thought about Sophie running on a beach, about waking up to ocean sounds instead of traffic, about fixing up a house with Victoria while the waves crashed outside. What about Sophie, he asked. Does she get a vote? She gets the biggest vote. And if she says no, then we figure something else out. But I have a feeling she'll surprise you. That night, Ethan sat Sophie down and told her everything. About Victoria, about the beach house, about the possibility of starting fresh somewhere new. Sophie listened carefully, asked questions, wanted to know if there were dinosaur museums nearby, if she could have her own room, if they'd still get to make waffles on Sunday mornings. So what do you think? Ethan asked when he'd explained it all. Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Will I still see Mom? Every other weekend plus holidays, nothing changes there. And you'll be happy? With Victoria? I think so. Yeah. Sophie nodded seriously. Then okay. We should go. Just like that? Dad, you're always sad here, even when you smile. Maybe at the beach you'll smile for real. Ethan pulled her into a hug. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're old. He laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in weeks. The moving process took 3 weeks. Ethan sold most of his furniture, packed what mattered into his truck, said goodbye to Mrs. Chen and the few other neighbors who'd become friends over the years. Jenny fought it initially, threatened lawyers and custody modifications. But when Ethan pointed out that the court had already ruled and he was still within the state, still following the custody agreement, she backed down, probably because her own lawyer told her she had no case. On the last day, Ethan stood in his empty apartment, looking at the space that had held his entire life for 4 years. It felt smaller, empty, less significant. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Ready? Ethan. Almost. Give me 10 minutes. Victoria. Take your time. I'll be here. Sophie was already in the truck, buckled in, clutching her stuffed dinosaur. Ethan climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. It coughed once, then caught. Here we go, he said. Here we go, Sophie echoed. They drove north, past the city limits, past the suburbs, past the exits that led to familiar places. The landscape changed slowly. More trees, less concrete, hills giving way to flat coastal plains. Victoria's house came into view just before sunset. It was smaller than her estate, older, paint peeling in places. The deck needed replacing. The garden was overgrown. It was perfect. Victoria was waiting on the porch. She'd beaten them there by a few hours. When Sophie saw her, she hesitated. Is that her? Sophie whispered. That's her. She's pretty. Yeah, she is. They got out of the truck. Sophie hung back, suddenly shy. Victoria came down the porch steps slowly, knelt down to Sophie's level. Hi, Victoria said. You must be Sophie. Your dad talks about you constantly. He talks about you too, Sophie said. Good things? Mostly. Sometimes he just looks sad and doesn't talk at all, Victoria smiled. Well, hopefully we can fix that. Want to see your room? It's got a window that looks right at the ocean. Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Come on. Sophie took Victoria's hand without hesitation. They walked into the house together. Ethan followed, carrying boxes, watching his daughter and the woman he loved disappear around a corner, already talking about paint colors and whether they could put glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. That first month was chaos. Good chaos. The kind that comes from 3 people learning to live together. Sophie and Victoria bonded over a shared love of terrible puns. Ethan fixed the deck and rewired half the house and discovered that the plumbing was somehow worse than the electrical. They ate dinner together every night, real dinners, not frozen waffles. Victoria learned to cook, badly at first, then better. Sophie taught her the dinosaur facts she'd learned in school. Ethan taught them both how to use a drill. In the evenings, after Sophie went to bed, Ethan and Victoria would sit on the newly fixed deck and watch the waves crash against the shore. "Do you miss it?" Ethan asked one night. "The company, the power, all of it." Victoria thought about it. "Sometimes I miss feeling important, feeling like I mattered in some big, measurable way." "You matter here." "I know, but it's different, smaller." "Is smaller bad?" "No, just different." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm learning that smaller might actually be better, that mattering to 3 people completely is worth more than mattering to 3,000 people in some abstract corporate way." "That's very wise." "Don't sound so surprised." They sat in comfortable silence. Inside, through the window, they could see Sophie's nightlight glowing, a small constellation in the darkness. "I love you," Victoria said. "I love you too." "Think we'll make it?" "I think we already did. Everything after this is just bonus." Victoria kissed him, soft and slow and full of promise. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the driveway looking at his truck. The new battery Victoria had installed was still working. The missing taillight had been replaced. The dent in the door was still there. Some things you didn't fix. Some things you kept as reminders. Sophie ran past him toward the beach, her backpack bouncing. She'd made friends at her new school. Good friends who came over for sleepovers and beach bonfires and all the normal kid things Ethan had worried she'd miss. Victoria came out of the house with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and stood beside him, watching Sophie chase the waves. "Jenny called," Victoria said. "What did she want?" "To tell me I'm doing a good job, that Sophie seems happy." Ethan almost dropped his coffee. "She said that?" Shocking, right? Apparently her therapist suggested she try being less hostile. Who knows if it'll last, but it's a start. Miracles happen. Sometimes. They walked down to the beach together. Sophie was building a sandcastle, completely absorbed. The ocean stretched out forever, blue and endless and full of possibility. "You know what's weird?" Ethan said. "What?" "I spent years thinking I needed to be more, make more money, have a better job, be impressive. But standing here right now with you and Sophie and this broken-down house we're slowly fixing, I don't feel like I need to be anything other than exactly who I am." Victoria smiled. "That's not weird. That's called being happy." "Is it? I thought happiness was supposed to be more dramatic, more obvious." "Happiness is standing on a beach drinking bad coffee while your daughter builds sandcastles. Everything else is just noise." Sophie ran over, covered in sand and salt water and pure joy. "Dad! Victoria! Come see what I made!" They followed her to an elaborate sandcastle complete with moat and towers and tiny shells for decoration. "It's beautiful," Victoria said. "It's going to wash away when the tide comes in," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "But that's okay. I'll just build a better one tomorrow." Ethan looked at Victoria. She looked back, both of them thinking the same thing, out of the mouths of children. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Ethan and Victoria sat on the deck under a sky full of stars. "I was thinking," Victoria said, "dangerous. I want to start a foundation, something that helps single parents, childcare assistance, legal aid, job training, all the things I never needed because I had money, but that people like you desperately need. People like me? People who work hard and love their kids and deserve better than to choose between paying rent and paying for aftercare." Ethan thought about all those afternoons when he'd been late picking up Sophie, all the times he'd stretched $5 into 3 meals, all the nights he'd lain awake wondering if he was enough. "That's a good idea," he said. "I thought maybe you could help. You understand what people need, what actually makes a difference." "I'm not a nonprofit expert." "No. But you're real. And sometimes real is more valuable than expert." They talked about it for hours. What it would look like, how it would work, who it would help. By the time they went to bed, they had the skeleton of a plan. It wasn't an empire. It wasn't going to make headlines or change the stock market. But it might help a single dad somewhere afford aftercare. Might help someone keep their kid when an ex-spouse tried to take them away. And that felt like enough. Ethan lay in bed that night, listening to the ocean outside and Victoria breathing beside him, and Sophie's soft snores from down the hall. He thought about the gate that had started all of this, the broken security system that had brought him to Victoria's estate, the moment that had changed everything. Some people might call it fate, others might call it luck. Ethan just called it life. Random and messy and occasionally beautiful. The important thing wasn't how it started. It was what they'd built from it. Not an empire, not a fairy tale, just a life, real and imperfect, and theirs. In the morning, Sophie would wake up asking for pancakes. Victoria would burn them slightly. Ethan would fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom that had been dripping for 3 weeks. They'd eat breakfast together. Maybe go to the beach. Maybe just sit around reading books and being lazy. It was ordinary, unremarkable. The kind of day that wouldn't make headlines or inspire movies or mean anything to anyone except the 3 people living it. And that's exactly what made it perfect. Because at the end of all the chaos and scandal and fighting, Ethan had learned something important, something he wished he'd understood years ago. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments or fairy tale endings. Love was about showing up every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It was about choosing someone over and over again, not because they were rich or impressive or could give you something you needed, but because they made you want to be better, made you believe you were worth something. Victoria had given him that, and he'd given it back to her. They'd both lost things to get here. Victoria lost her company. Ethan nearly lost his daughter. They'd both lost the versions of themselves they'd been pretending to be. But they'd found something more valuable. They'd found each other, found a way to be real in a world that rewarded fakeness, found peace in the middle of chaos. And if that wasn't a happy ending, Ethan didn't know what was. The ocean kept crashing outside. The stars kept burning overhead. And inside a small beach house that still needed work, 3 people slept soundly, safe in the knowledge that they'd finally found where they belonged. Not in a mansion, not in a courtroom, not in headlines or photographs or other people's opinions. Just here, together, building something that mattered in the only way that really counted. One ordinary, beautiful day at a time.